I feel compelled to make this video due to a dumbass Canadian. Keep on coming to my channel, trying to promote his euthanization. Yes, I know the average age is 76. I looked it up. I know statistics. But there still was a 55-year-old homeless woman euthanized instead of giving her a home. So don't talk to me about 76. It means nothing. Why not bring back our sacred deaths instead of promoting euthanization? Or, hey, dude, get yourself a near-death experience so you can see there's another side. Because clearly you don't know about stuff like that because you're deep in ignorance. So I've done investigation. I found Nurse Julie. She's absolutely fabulous. Reason why not to euthanize Canadians, which is murder-suicide. Them out. We make people comfortable in the hospice. So if you think they're suffering, maybe you should check out Hospice Nurse Julie rather than coming on my YouTube channel when we qualify for euthanization in our shit show neighborhood. Oh, and how dare you come on my channel and talk about euthanization and support it when I qualify for it and most people down here does. And you let us suffer in a shit show? And you're concerned about euthanization? This was just horrible. The person won't be able to make any more comments on my channel because it's been pretty fucking horrible.
I'm going to tell you a story about a beautiful death that changed my life. Okay, so sometimes it's hard for me to tell all of my stories because not every one of my stories has these big, elaborate endings. But they're still really profound to me because of the meaningfulness behind them and the people that I connected with in these stories. So let me tell you this story. I hope you connect with it as much as I do. It's beautiful and sad all at the same time, and hopefully I won't cry.
Sacred dying. Not like a coward getting suicided out, having someone murder you. No, this is sacred dying. This is being brave. Dying has always happened. Suffering always happens. Who wants to cure suffering with euthanization? You're sick in the head.
Too much. Okay, so it was a young couple, and the husband was on hospice. He was dying of some kind of cancer, and he was young, like in his 50s, and so was his wife. They had 2 young children, which of course made everything a little more difficult and just hard. And on top of all of that, they were Spanish speaking only. And I do not speak Spanish, unfortunately, even though since I've met them, I continuously say I'm going to learn Spanish. I'm working on it. But so I had to use a translator every single visit. And this guy needed visits probably 2-3 times a week for months on end, which I was happy to do so, but it was just a lot of using translators and
maybe this is too expensive for people that promote euthanization in Canada, where we give out free drugs for millions of dollars. Is this too expensive? Is this a waste of money for Canadians to invest in their dying people so they can have a sacred death?
With this family. So because I was there so often, the wife and I connected so well, despite this translator. She spoke 0 English, I spoke 0 Spanish. And even though we had this translator on my phone, every visit, we still really connected. There were times where I didn't even need the translator to finish because her and I were just on the same page. I felt for her so hard. And I loved the patient too, of course, her husband, but
I understand that connecting. I used to sell stereos in stereo stores, and I sold stereos to Russians that came off the boat that spoke no English, Filipinos, and a lot of people. So I understand connecting. I don't want to connect to people in my neighborhood. It's always been bad. Or they die if I like them.
was really sick and was really lethargic most of the time. He needed a lot of help.
Difference in my neighborhood, people are dying because my country, Canada, is a drug dealer plus slash started out with the Nazi health termination program that some pathetic Canadians insist on supporting on my YouTube channel, and I qualify for it. So ignorant.
She was helping him the whole time. She was the main caregiver. And sometimes I would forget that I would use these interpreters, and I would like leave the house and hear a loud like sigh and forget like who that was. And then I'd remember, oh my God, there's an interpreter on the phone who's been interpreting all of this heavy information. And then I'd have to like re-talk to the interpreter, like apologizing for putting them, and they were on the phone for hours in this hospital visit, or in this hospice visit with this patient and me. So the interpreter was going through all of this too. Like they didn't know, they interpret all types of things. They didn't know they were going to be like every day interpreting for this hospice patient. So then I'd have to debrief with the interpreter after all these visits. The reason why this patient and his family changed my life is because of the love that I experienced and witnessed while I was taking care of him. His wife, despite having 2 young children and a dying husband, was so caring and so loving and so wonderful to me, to her family, to her children, to her husband. I was there for his last breath. I was there with them for his last breath. And it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, despite it being so sad. Let me explain why it was so beautiful. I was in this room watching, just because death is not an emergency. I didn't have to do anything. He was very comfortable. I just happened to be there when he was taking his last breath. His parents were above his head, rubbing his head, speaking in Spanish, saying sweet nothings. Her parents were at his feet, rubbing his feet, and praying over him. His children were in bed with him. His shirt was off, and his wife was like laying on his chest. And just, this is where I can't not cry. It's so beautiful. His wife is on his chest, of course, just saying how much she loved him and thanking him for a wonderful life. And he was fully unconscious. He was not responding back, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever witnessed. And the fact that they let me be there to witness all of that. And despite the grief, right? Despite the deep sadness, like I don't cry about this because of the deep sadness. I cry about this because of the beauty that you witness at the end of life. Like the love in that room was palpable. It was so powerful. It overtook the sadness, the love they had for this man, and of course the grief they had for losing him. But it's the greatest act of love to care for your loved one when they're dying. It is so hard. It's so uncomfortable. It's so painful, but you still do it. You still show up. You still are in the room with them at their last breath and creating this special, sacred moment. And that is why I love my job. That is why I don't think hospice nursing is depressing. That is why I don't think dying on hospice is depressing, for moments like this. And I've seen countless moments like these. This one particularly sticks out to me because I feel like it could have gone a very different way. He was a young person dying with young children, and that's, to me, extra hard, right? And there's a lot of denial.
See, he was in his 50s. But in Canada, she calls that young. In Canada, a young person was euthanized for being homeless and not liking it. So I'll leave a link to Hospice Nurse Julie. She's absolutely beautiful. It's a job I could never do. I see a lot of dead people, and in my neighborhood, it's unnatural deaths. There's no beauty, no sacredness in. It's just tragic. Either stabbings, shootings, and drug overdoses galore. There's nothing sacred. And there's nothing sacred about suicide murder program. 10 commandments. One is thou shalt not kill. There's no but behind thou shalt not kill, but if the person's suffering. These people are brave. We should make our Canadians brave again and let them have sacred deaths. Not something that would make Hitler happy. He probably wished he could have. Oh, he did that. That's how they started out. And Canada even tried to go after the children. Shame on you. You know who you are.